I'd rather be with you. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you're fine, even if you are confined to home. I know it's not that easy to be constrained to stay at home, but you know what? We're gonna spend a good moment together because we're gonna talk with Rhai. We're gonna discover his entrepreneurial path, and that's why we've decided to start Good Vibe Radio. So, hello, Rhai. How are you?
Hello, Alice. I'm good. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. I know you a little bit, but not enough to be able to tell all of your story. So I'm very happy to discover you. The main goal of this discussion is to share some good vibes, to stay positive and optimistic during this period of time, and to make it interactive, my friends. So thank you, Ophélie. Hello. You can speak in the chat on the right and ask any question that you want all along this conversation. So, Rhai, what do you do today? Like, what is your new company? Because I know you're launching a new company after having shut down a former company that used to be famous, actually, in the tech ecosystem, at least here in Europe, which was Sound.
Yeah, correct. So my new company is Takeoff Labs, which is basically a startup studio focused on social consumer experiences. So it's basically e-founders, but instead of doing B2B SaaS, we do social consumer apps. So it could be dating apps, it could be any kind of social network you could think of, like any utility where we actually connect people. And we do actually 3 things, which is the first one is building our own products. The second one, we do partner with other app developers as well. So sometimes people do great apps, but they like a few things about re-engagement, variety, or monetization. And we work with them, we audit the app, we make a few recommendations, and then we also promote their own apps on our own in-house advertising platform called JetFuel. And then we share profits. And the last activity of the studio is acquiring other companies as well.
Cool. Alex is already reacting and saying, "No way! I was dreaming of a B2C e-founders."
Hi, Alex.
So you're doing exactly what you've been good at doing, meaning the social consumer experiences. It's something that you know. So I would love, with you, Rhai, to go back on your path. Okay. How you became an entrepreneur. Where do you come from? Were your parents entrepreneurs? Where did you grow up?
So I was born in Paris. Actually, I was born in Saint-Denis. For French people, they would know. But my parents, they are originally from Mauritius. They were born in Mauritius. They went to France. They studied in France because college is free in France. My parents, they are now doctors and lawyers. So I'm very lucky. But we come from, so like I told you earlier, my great-grandparents were slaves. My grandparents wouldn't know how to read, and my parents are the first one to actually get a college degree. And now I'm kind of a black sheep because I'm from an Asian family, and we all have to be doctors. And actually, I went to med school for the first year. Didn't attend any classes at all. And even if I would be very bad, I guess. I wouldn't get it. But just during that time, I founded my first company. Back in the day, it was called HypeQuest, which was a media about sneakers, graffiti, and street culture.
Okay, so street culture, this was your passion, basically, huh?
Yeah, it was. So it wasn't a company back then. It was I realized later that it could become a company. I would just do 16 hours a day writing about stuff I would love, and it was just about showcasing the French culture to the European and US ecosystem, because there was so much more that was valuable, I think, from our culture. than people would just know back then, because back then you wouldn't have like Facebook, you wouldn't have bloggers, this kind of stuff.
When was it exactly?
It was 2006.
So 2006, you launched this first media, hip hop and street culture media, basically.
Yeah, correct.
And you were, how old you were at that time?
19, yes.
Okay. Just to share your passion and to talk with the rest of the world about the street culture from France to the rest of the world.
Yeah, since I was not going to uni anymore, because I was not passionate about med school, actually, I was just staying home, and instead of, like wasting time, I was just spending like hours a day writing about stuff I would love.
In English?
And it was in English.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, back in the day, I was using WordPress. I started designing stuff, hacking stuff by myself. I was using the internet connection of my neighbors, and I would just stay at my place and just writing about stuff. And I would also learn.
But you were talking about what? About the French rappers? About
no, it was not only. So basically, back then you would have only one media back then called so the three actually, Hypebeast, Slamite, and High Snowbite. But they would only talk about what you would see at Colette. But the French scene was much more than just Colette. I love Colette. I have nothing against them, but there's so much more than just Colette. So I would talk about everything else that was happening in Paris back then, or even in Europe. And I was actually hosting blogs from other European artists or shops or whatever. And it was always just because I think that back then people would think that something is hype or something is valuable just because they would see something at Colette, but I would feel sad because I wouldn't know all the background about the artist and the brand. And
so just for the people who are watching us right now, some know Colette, some may not know Colette. Colette used to be a famous flagship store of all the hipster culture or street culture. I don't know. I've been twice in my life. It was right in the middle.
It was what they would call a concept store, and they were just selling cool stuff, I guess. But it wasn't only street culture. Back then, it was like a very small corner at the second floor of the shop. Then it became at the ground floor because street culture is now huge. But they would sell everything from haute couture to sneakers.
Okay. Cool. And so you were still a student, but not going to uni, and then from this first experience, what did you do?
So that's when I basically I was learning about all this stuff, and I learned about a guy called Fraser Cook, Mark Fraser, and he has a very weird job, which is basically so his official title was back then a global energy manager, but that doesn't mean much.
Global energy manager.
Yeah, back then
he was working at Nike.
And he was working at Nike, yeah.
And this guy was a mentor, kind of like even if he didn't know you didn't know him. He was an inspiration for you.
He was an inspiration just because, like, he was basically his job was to keep Nike cool. Like, he was making all the cool stuff, and he still is, like 20 years after. And I was like, okay, he's working at Nike, but obviously he's got to pay his bills. He's making money from doing cool stuff. So how can I do cool stuff like him and make a living from it? So that was an inspiration. I was like, okay, if I want to have like this kind of C-level position at a company like Nike, I have to get a degree from an Ivy League. If I want to get an MBA from an Ivy League, I have to get like 8 years of experience, working experience. And then I was like, okay, how can I get 8 years of work experience? I had no degree back then.
Okay, this is called reverse engineering.
It was reverse engineering. And I still had this, so I basically took a white paper and I drew in frise chronologique, like a line, a chronological line. And I was like, okay, how do I become Fraser Cook? And I want to become him. I'm like, I can become have a goal, like, a goal. And then I was like, okay, it's too late for business school or engineering school. And then I was like, okay, let's go to La Sorbonne because it's free. Everybody can go there. And people abroad would know about La Sorbonne, and that's how I started to study.
And what did you study at La Sorbonne?
So I did a very boring stuff. My first degree is a master in finance, and the second thing is a master in innovation and technology management, which is a bit bullshit. I mean, I love my class and my teachers, and but it's very weird to teach these things, like to teach like from a academic perspective, because it's very different from doing and just teaching theories. And I did that because I would know that I would have a lot of spare time to start my own company.
So you started your own company while you were studying at La Sorbonne, and we met actually at that time a long time ago, something like 8 or 9 years ago. And you launched a music-related company. Can you give us the pitch and the context?
So back then, so that's when I found out. So actually, I worked at Nike for a year, and then I came back to Paris, went to do that last degree, and then started Sounds.
Did you met your star?
Yeah, I met him last year actually. And it was a very weird coincidence. I was like, what are the odds that I would actually meet this guy one day? So I went to him and I told him that I'm doing what I'm doing today thanks to him. And so he was very surprised because he's not someone famous. And yeah, it was like a closing a loop for me.
So cool.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, so Sounds, back to Sounds. Sounds was a social network for music. It was, we're basically connecting people thanks to music. So let's say that you love listening to The Weeknd, and I would show you other people.
I love The Weeknd.
And so you have stuff to talk about, and you would have a lot to share about. And basically, yeah, so that was the pitch for Sounds. It was basically like MySpace back in the day. And you would see what people like, what kind of artists, what kind of songs, and then you would connect with those people. You would be able to chat, you would be able to listen to music, to share music together, that kind of stuff.
And at the time, we could listen. There was no Spotify, no Deezer. There was only YouTube to listen to music. What did we use?
So that's a very good question. Back then, so Spotify was getting famous. They were basically marketing themselves as the free iTunes for Europe. So that's how you can get to market free.
SoundCloud was already there, no?
SoundCloud was already there. I was spending a lot of time on SoundCloud all day. And yes, I was a huge fan on SoundCloud. I was spending hours and hours and hours a day on SoundCloud. And actually, what people don't really realize is that the biggest app for music, very by far, is YouTube. They have like I would say like 90% of the market, and most of the apps on the App Store, that like the most popular ones, are not Apple Music, they are not Spotify, they are SoundCloud, there are other apps using the YouTube API actually. And it's a huge potential as well for Spotify and the others to get these shares.
Cool. So you were working on the Sounds. This was a social network around music, so you could connect with people who would love the same music as you, and you could follow some people who would love the same music as you. And what was the business model of that?
So the business model. So at first we would sell like just a one-time purchase, just to have something like to create a currency within the app, and would tell people, okay, you can either invite your friends or pay for something, or pay for it. But actually, we would not even know back then how to unlock the feature, because we would not be able to track if you actually invited the people, so we would not even unlock this feature. And then we turned this feature into a paid subscription to make it recurring. And every time people would ask for features, we would add these features into that paid subscription. And that could be other feature to connect to people, such as being able to message other people in the network, or to see who looked at your profile, just like on LinkedIn. We were basically selling social features, just like Tinder and LinkedIn.
So you've been working for years with a lot of ups and downs on sounds. That's why I'm insisting a little bit on this experience before moving to your new venture, because you've learned a lot. You almost made it to Y Combinator. You finally met another opportunity. You found another opportunity while applying to Y Combinator. I would love to go through this. And you've been really suffering from bad investors. And you can teach us a lot on how to find a business angel and what to accept, what not to accept.
Sure. So yeah, so
just about sound first, so that we can just get the context. In the app, you've reached up to 3 million monthly active users.
Yeah. So yeah, with sounds, I never had. So just to be like very to put just some numbers, I never had more than 200K in the bank, which seems a lot, but it was actually like just a few months of burn rate. So I never had like I'm not able to say that at some point I had like maybe 6 months or a year of cash ahead, and it was never like that. So it was always hustling. We never did marketing, just not because we didn't want to, just because we don't have cash to do marketing. We were never featured on the App Store or the Play Store, so everything was organic, just through growth hacks, I would say, most of the time. So it was hard.
If you have questions, my friends, about these growth hacks or anything, please feel free to ask your questions. And I just want to interrupt you one time, Rhai, on that one, because just to talk about this, you say we were hustling. Don't you feel like during this quarantine, the entrepreneurs, in a way, are a little bit privileged, in the sense that they are so used to chaos and crisis that it's not that much of sacrifices that they have to do to really feel comfortable in this global chaos?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, startups are hard. It's always chaos. We never have cash. It's always a crisis. So we're kind of used to it. And if you have enough cash to buy food and you have a roof, then everything else should be like a bonus. And like if you're a small company competing with a big one, it could be either Spotify or a SaaS company like Salesforce. I mean, now is your time, I guess, to use these 3 months of quarantine, these 2 months of quarantine, just to catch up, and even to like be better than them. Just because these guys, they're big, they have to move from office to working from home. They have to adapt. They're going through it's a fucking mess for them. It's even harder than for us. For us, we're used to it, where we can work from home. And
oh my God, it's a cat! It's a cat on your couch behind.
Yeah, it's Yum Yum.
Oh, Yum Yum! Hello, Yum Yum! I can introduce to Lion or not?
Yes.
Excuse me, but Yum Yum and Lion. Hello. Sorry for that.
So yeah, it's easy to say that we should see everything as an opportunity, but I actually think that for us it's an opportunity. I mean, for like people are spending so much more time on their phone, on every screens. They used to work like we can work from home. We are used to it. We are fast. We know how to deal with crisis, and it's also the perfect time for us to make the hard decision, just to let go of all the things that are not essential to your business. Like now is the time to cut all the costs. Now is the time to make the right decision and the hard ones.
All the little things all the things that were under the carpet, you were procrastinating or postponing. Now you don't have the choice. You have to make the radical decisions. True. Yeah. Adele is saying that my cat is well fed. Yeah.
Mine too, but
Pay attention, Adele, to what you say. All right, so let's go back to sounds. So
yeah. So about YC, so basically, so we were running out of cash, like usual. Like we were running out of cash all the time. And then, so we basically, so I was like, okay, I never went to the US. I don't know.
You were running out of cash, but you had millions of users. How many millions of users?
So at the top of the app, we had around 3 million monthly active users.
Okay.
It was like a lot of ups and downs depending on growth.
Not all of them were paying. Some of them were.
Yeah, at most. So I'm going to talk in just sales. At most, it was almost like 300K a month in recurring revenue. If we combine iOS and Android.
Okay.
At top.
And you were how many people?
Sorry?
In the team you were?
At the peak, we were 13 in the team.
13, okay.
Yeah, we never had a big team. And actually, when we had these big numbers, 3 million monthly active or 300K, at that time, we were maybe 6 in the team.
So there is a question from Clément. So why were you running out of cash? What were you spending money on?
So that's a good question. So basically, there are a few things. So we never had a lot of cash in the bank, never. So, and then you would have to basically pay rent, to pay people. People is the biggest cost here. So I think it was almost 100K a month. Like you add like you know, like the salaries, but also all the taxes and stuff. It's almost 100K. And when you make the money actually on the App Store, they pay you only 60 days later. So we had also a cash flow issue back then, but then I fixed it. But anyway, and basically every time we would make more money, we would invest that money. We would hire more people. We would add new tools and stuff. And basically the costs were like 100K for people. We were paying Amplitude, like, you know, all the SaaS tools, AWS, Google and stuff. But we were not burning a lot. At the end, we were burning between 15K and 30K at top. We were never able to burn a lot anyway because we didn't have cash. So back then we were running out of cash. And we applied to, and we were not making so much money back then as well. So, and we applied to YC just to be able to meet some people in the US. And also what we did is that back then we found a hack on Facebook. We were basically sending like millions of game requests a day, just like Candy Crush. Like you just got an invite to play Candy Crush, but it was like for this, but for sounds. And we hacked Facebook back then, and everybody in the Silicon Valley were sending like invites to each other. And I basically called the email the top VC in the Valley, and they all replied to me because they were like, who are these guys? Or why am I getting invites every day? And I met with Matt Kohler from Benchmark and Josh Hellman from Greylock. And when I went there, to apply to YC, we did an interview. It went really bad because they are not doing social or music anymore. And the last day, I had a breakfast with Josh Hellman, and he was like, no, you should not go to YC, you should go to NFX. I was like, what is NFX? And he's like, okay, these two guys, James and Stan, they've been friends for 20 years, and they were the first growth hackers in Silicon Valley. And they've been investing in a lot of companies personally, just like one of them is Houseparty, actually. But
Houseparty, which is really used right now.
Yeah, it's huge.
Everybody's on Houseparty right now.
Yeah, it's the perfect NFX company because it has all the fundamental principles of what we learned there. But they also invested in Lyft, in DoorDash, so a lot of companies. And then I basically meet James on a Saturday morning on the beach in San Francisco, and for the frisbee tournament of his kids. And back then he seems very weird to me. You know, like he was wearing sunscreens with a small cap, and he was telling weird stories about porn stuff on MySpace. And the
beginning of MySpace was
he was basically telling the truth about. So what I like about James, he's always telling the truth. like all the stuff that you would never hear anywhere else. And he was basically telling us how MySpace, sorry, grew back then using porn stuff, and then rebranded into music.
Not maybe porn, but naked pictures.
Yeah, naked pictures, weird stuff. And then basically, so we meet with him, and then he told us to apply. We went back to Paris. On Monday, we applied. On Tuesday, we had an interview with Gigi, the third partner. And then on Wednesday, they made us an offer. On Thursday, we said yes. And Monday afterwards, we were all in Silicon Valley for 5 months. And we said yes because we had no cash.
and they offer you to invest?
Yeah, they invest, and they basically, okay, they say, so it depends if
your cap table wasn't that good.
My cap table was a mess. So
can you explain why?
Yeah, so I basically raised 400K in equity, half of it from a group of business angel, and the other half from a VC, small VC, now based in the west of France, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It was a mess because so there are so many lines, you know, like you have to deal with 18 people, and these 18 people, you're basically a distraction for them. You know, like they don't understand your business. It's not their fault. It's just because they never did it before. They are most of the time very old, and they have a very different vision from of investing for them.
I have to say that you were not at the family back
no,
then.
I was. Actually, I had a meeting at the family, and just after our first fundraising, and I think you were there. There was Jean back then. There are Oussama and maybe Balthazar, and you were so surprised that we raised from these guys in just a month, and that was actually a red flag. It was weird that they would invest in a company like us because they never did any investment.
I cannot understand that.
Yeah, but I think they maybe saw an opportunity looking at the growth. Anyway, so yeah, the cap table was amazing.
It's exactly called dumb money.
Sorry?
It's called dumb money, right?
Yeah.
It's the money that is opportunistic, but they won't bring any value, and actually they will prevent you from growing.
Yeah, it's toxic money, I would say.
You can say toxic money, yes.
And it's stupid. It's my fault. It's not their fault because I went to them and I didn't see anyone else. And we had a good growth at the beginning. And I didn't meet any other investor just because they said yes to me, and I was like, okay, if I have a yes, I don't have to see any other investor. But now, if someone says yes to me, I would also meet a lot of other investors and run a competition between them, and then pick the right one.
To create some momentum, some pressure.
Yeah, back then I didn't have like this experience to pick the right investor. Just because they would say yes to me, I was like, okay, so everything is going well, it's going very fast. And I didn't see like between the lines, like for instance, in the shareholder agreement, there is a
liquid pref.
Yeah, liquid pref, which is not cool on seed, but not 1x, it was 2x. And that tells you a lot about the investor. 2x liquid pref on a seed shareholder agreement is a huge red flag. But yeah, I wasn't experienced enough to see this kind of thing. So yeah, the cap table was a mess, and then I also started to see the true face of these guys, because when everything is going well, they're cool, there is no issue. But when you run a startup, it's always a mess. You always have shit to deal with, and when everything is going south, these guys, instead of supporting you, they see leverage. And I think the good investor is the guy, when everything is going bad, he's the one who keeps you afloat. And that's very important. So yeah, it was a mess. And when NFX offered to invest in us, I also took some money from Kima, Otium as well. And back then, basically, one of them offered these guys a buyout. And they said no. and
they said no.
Yeah, so basically we offered them 2.5x, and then they were like, no, we want 4x. And I was like, I don't think it's gonna go through. They're gonna drop. And they were like, no, we want 4x. Okay, I said, yes, I'm gonna try. And okay, we tried 4x. So the other investor dropped the deal. And then it was a year or 2 years afterwards, I learned that actually this group of investors, of angels, only 2 guys knew about the offer, and they didn't tell the other guys. And that was their job, actually, because you're not talking always to the 18 people. You're only talking to the 2 guys. And then they
made the decision on their own.
They made the decision on their own.
If the others had known, they would have said, yes, of course, take the money.
Yeah, because when things were even harder a year or 2 years afterwards, I had to have breakfast with all of them.
And the truth came out.
And the truth came out. Like, so I sent an email. So half of them told me to fuck off, and then they would never talk to me because I'm a bad person.
And what is crazy? Excuse me, Rhai, because I just saw that you open up on LinkedIn on your page, and you said, I'm launching my new company, Takeoff Labs. I'm very happy. I invite you to visit the website, etc. We're going to do this and that. And I saw some comments from these business angels saying, "What the fuck, Rhai? You made us lose money, and how dare you?"
Yeah.
So it's written in French, and I was like, oh shit! Like, it's really the mentality of this kind of toxic investors, basically. Like, as long as they will put a shame on you for failing that hard, you cannot feel how to say encouraged to start a new venture. It's really about this deep fear of shame of failure.
And I would think that a year later they would just leave me alone, and a year later they're still there stalking me on socials and just leaving bad comments. And these guys are like 60 or 70 years old, like and they're just behaving like an ex-girlfriend
and they are the one who refused the offer.
These are the 2 guys who didn't tell the others.
They could have multiplied by 2.5 and said no.
Yeah, and even worse than that, because so some of the money that we got was on convertible notes, and when everything went south last year, so some of them, these guys, they actually converted their notes into equity just to get more power for shareholder meetings. But 2 people asked for a refund, and I had the time to refund these 2 people. So it's so like it's how would say that, it's malhonnête. It's so
unfaithful, distrustful. No, malhonnête.
It's dishonest, I guess, to say that, because they could act. So they had an opportunity to get 2.5, and then when they asked for to convert the notes instead of a refund. And 2 of them asked for the refund, and the 2 of these guys got a refund. So
right, okay. So lesson learned. Now, when you want to raise funds, what's gonna happen?
So it's gonna be very different. And like I said, I don't want to re-blame all these people, because some of them are very good people. They are not all bad people. And also, I learned that when I wanted to meet each one of them, so half of them told me to fuck off, the other half I had breakfast with them, and that's how I learned that they didn't even know back then that they had an offer on the table. And then I
must have been angry. They must have, because Fatoumata is asking how did they react.
I remember one of them. So I'm not gonna name her, but then I told her, like, why didn't you take that offer back then? And she was like, you're lying. She insulted me, like she was like, you're always lying. Like, anyway, and I was like, how can I lie? We have like email conversations of this negotiation, and then I showed her these emails, And I was like, what? If I had this offer, of course I would say yes. And I know that a lot of other angels in that group would also say yes. And so that's when I also learned basically that we were not getting along because we didn't have the same level of ambition. And if you don't have the same level of ambition, you don't have the same strategy. You don't prepare the same way. And of course, it was always like we were on two different roads. It was we would never get along. So now I would just I would get traction. I would make sure that my founder team is very solid, that we all bring value, that we all have a founder mindset. I would try to get traction as fast as I can, and then try to meet as many investors in the right space within 2 weeks. And I would also ask for some feedback on these guys, for sure. And I didn't do that back then, because I do think we always said that the most important thing in your team is your team. Basically, that's the most important, the most valuable thing in your company. And I do agree that the team is the most important thing. And I also think that we should also include investor within the team. And I do think that your company is no better than your weakest team member.
Yeah.
And
there was a question from Jordan who asked, did you run any acquisition campaign regarding sounds
we did a few tests on Snap ads. We did a few tests on Instagram stories, but we were because when we had to raise money, like investors were asking us about the acquisition cost, the lifetime value, all this stuff, which is fine, which is like obvious question when you're raising your name. But back then we wouldn't know these numbers because we didn't run any acquisition campaign at all. We were like, but it's just free. We don't really know. And so we did a few tests just to see how much it would cost us to acquire someone and how long this person would stay.
So the answer is actually no, you didn't.
No, it's just a few. It's very small, so it's not significant enough to have an impact on the top line.
And so for your new company now, so you closed, you decided, you made the decision to stop.
Yeah, so it was a mess because at the end we were not talking anymore. They would not answer calls, they would not answer texts, emails, whatever. They were just doing whatever they think is right through legal stuff. I lost a lot of my team. It was hard. During 3 months, I was trying to find a new team to cut all the costs. I went from losing 30K a month to making 30K a month in 3 months. All of that while fighting all these 18 people and some also employees who just want the chômage, like that's all they wanted.
Unemployment, yeah.
Unemployment, yeah. Finding new office, cutting all the costs, getting the company afloat. And when I got the company afloat, then it was just 3 months of negotiation with these guys. I was like, okay, I'm either gonna buy you out, you can either can buy me out, or we can just shut down the company. And they would think that I would never do that, just because they were basically saying that I would die in the streets alone if they were not there for me, and that I don't have any value without them. So they were like, okay, Sans was luck for him, and he would never be able to do that again. So he would never dare to shut down the company, and he would stay in the company, work with us, and he dares to leave, we're gonna sue him for whatever reasons, and we're gonna make sure that he would never be able to legally launch a company ever again. And it was just too much for me, and I was like, okay, this relationship is very toxic, and I decided to shut down the company and just to take care of myself.
It's not only toxic, it's really like perverse. It's really like, it's kind of persecutors, kind of, like they really want you down.
Oh yeah, so if you read the comments, they don't hide themselves from that.
Okay, so what did you realize then? So you started taking care of yourself a little bit. You've been what did you decide for yourself, for your life, for your own well-being?
Yeah. So basically, I started doing all the things that I didn't take the time to do for the past 7 years because it was like just working 24/7. No weekends, no evenings. I wasn't seeing my family anymore, no my friends, and that was my fault. I didn't have the maturity, the experience to save some time for my friends, for my family, for my girlfriend. I was just like the company, because I couldn't sleep. I was like, I have to pay. I have to be able to pay the salaries, so they would be able to pay rent. I was like, that was the thing that would keep me awake at night all the time. And yeah, and then I shut down the company. I was like, this is just way too much. Thankfully, I was just a lot on the phone with my mother. My brother was in my office every time just to support me. So thanks to my brother and my mother, I could go through all of that. That was really important to me. And then I just started to do all the things like fixing my teeth, getting a driving license,
Wow.
going back to the gym, traveling to see my family. I didn't go back to Réunion Island for maybe 3 years. And
I love, by the way, I love this island. I've been there for the first time of my life several months ago when the world was still open to travel. And I discovered this island and I love it. I love it for the diversity of people living there. It's crazy to see how
amazing. It's
yes, Chinese people from Indian people, Muslims, Africans, all living together and proud of being French because they are French.
Yeah, it's even for me like so my dad is a Muslim and I went to Islamic school at some point. And what is amazing in Réunion Island is that you have so much diversity and people are all living together and they're also very proud of their culture. And actually the first time I would see someone who is wearing the hijab was in Réunion Island. And even myself, I was shocked. But for people, it was totally normal there. And what is also amazing is that you would have Muslim people getting married to Christian, to Jews, to whatever, and they would still have their religion like really at heart. And that's something that you don't see in Mauritius, which is like only 30 minutes away.
And on the dance floor, Chinese people are dancing Sega better than
that's very true.
It's crazy. I love this island.
Yeah.
So you
yeah, when I shut down the company, I went back to Réunion Island like maybe 3 or 4 times in the same year, and it was the first time since 4 years, like for 4 years. Like then, so yeah, just starting to take care of myself, and I do think that if you're not like the most important person is yourself, so you have to take care about yourself to be at 100% of yourself on Monday, and then you can take care of your company. So yeah, it took me 7 years to realize that. That the most important person is yourself. You have to take care of yourself, and then you can take care of others, like your company, your girlfriend, your family, your friends. You cannot. Yeah, we're not superheroes.
Yeah. It's like when the plane is crashing, you first put the mask on yourself, and then you can help the others. Otherwise,
yeah, it was just. Yeah, and I actually blame myself for not shutting down my company earlier. And now I'm like, I should have done it like maybe 3 years ago. So like I went through so much. I even went through. I stayed in the hospital for a few days because I got an ulcer because of these guys, and I didn't realize that it was too much. And it was, and I know that once I met with Pierre Valade in New York, and we had lunch. And
the founder of what's the name of his company that he sold to Microsoft?
Sunrise, the calendar. And he told me that something very interesting. I was like, okay, I have we're talking about. I was basically asking for advice, and I was like, okay, I have some issues with these guys. And he was like, okay, just put a Gmail filter and don't reply to these guys anymore. And I was like, okay, this seems very obvious, but I didn't even think about that earlier. And he was like, we can either spend the rest of the lunch talking about these guys, but these guys bring no value to the table.
True.
Or you can just put on the Gmail filter, don't reply to them anymore, and we can talk about real stuff that actually brings value to your company.
Exactly. And Usama is saying hallelujah about the fact that you should have shut the companies years earlier. Hallelujah that you are realizing this.
Yeah.
But it's cool. That's the best lesson. I mean, it takes time to learn, and that's a good experience.
Yeah, it's just because at first it was like you're very excited, and then you're like, okay, I cannot let down my friends and my colleagues that I considered friends. I cannot let down even in the group of angels. There was within the 18 people.
Yeah, there were some people that you would love.
Yeah, there was actually one guy I actually really cared about, and I'm like, okay, this guy really trusts me. I cannot let him down. I have to go.
But you let yourself down.
Yeah.
So now we are in the middle of a crisis. You're starting your new venture.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Manu. That's a bit weird. Actually, when I shut down Sound, I met with James again, and he was like, don't stay in Paris, come in San Francisco. Your people are there. The other, product people are there, move there. I was like, San Francisco, I don't know. I don't really like the city. If I move to the US, it would be either New York or LA. And he was like, okay, you should move there. So meet these two guys, Tim and JJ. They're like you. They're product guys. They were at Instagram, Messenger. They're doing great stuff. Their company is making a lot of cash. I'm pretty sure you can do something together. And so I met with these guys. And at first, I wasn't doing a company with them. At first, I was doing like a freelancing stuff for them, just because I had to get cash to buy food. Because when I shut down Sounds, I don't have like chômage. So I need cash to buy food. And then we decided to go all in and to build our own company, which is Takeoff Labs. So these guys, Tim and JJ, they have their own company, Jet Fuel. So it's jetfuel.it. They basically connect influencers from Instagram and Snapchat to app developers such as TikTok or Voodoo. These guys, they're doing great. They're doing millions in revenue every month. They're very, very profitable. And basically, my job with Takeoff Labs is to make a bigger company than them. And my plan to doing so is basically do what ByteDance did with TikTok. Because I do believe that if we want to get to 100 million daily active users right now, you have to spend money into advertising today. And to get there, I'm basically building like a network of social consumer apps that makes money that I will use as a launch pad to launch like a free app, I would say, to remove friction and to get it at scale. And I would have to be able to spend money not only on jet fuel that help us to get to at least 1 million daily active user, but on every other networks.
Cool, that's ambitious.
Yeah, so it's basic. So I'm really lucky, and we incorporated the company. It was in December. We did, training stuff since January, and now is finally ready to launch it and to officially, launch it, because launching doesn't mean much actually. And I'm really happy because I'm basically able to do what I like, which is designing products every day, all day. And I'm also able to launch them at scale thanks to my co-founders. So that's awesome. And that's a project I had in my mind for years.
Yes. What will be the first app?
So basically, it can be very different. So we're launching one by the end of the week. It's going to be a dating app, actually. That's going to be launched this week. We're running a test campaign today, and hopefully we can blow it up by the end of the week. And
can you give us some insights about these dating apps?
I would rather not tell. Yeah.
Okay.
But talk about the other projects, which is a bit different. It's called Till. like turquoise. It's actually a credit card that automatically calculate and offset your carbon footprint and gives you cash back at eco-friendly merchants. And you're basically also in a competition with your friends to be the most eco-friendly person, I would say. And I actually had this idea thanks to Alexis Jamet from Bunker. Because when I was traveling last year to Réunion Island, he was looking at my Instagram stories and he was like, "Oh, that looks amazing." And he was like, "Oh, you would love it. You would love it here. You should come." And he was like, "No, I'm not taking the plane anymore." And I'm like, "Okay, but I cannot do that because my parents live there. I cannot not see them anymore." So I was like, "We need another solution, which is when you actually consume something, you should also give back to the planet." And not feel guilty about it as well, because I still have to see my parents, and I'm not the only one in this position. So that's how we started the project. I found, just like eFounders, we found a team to run this project. So I'm very excited about this one, actually.
Do you think after the crisis, the people will travel less?
Actually, I don't know what I don't know. I really don't, and I don't think so, because I mean, I don't know, like maybe for the first months, yes, because I think a lot of companies are going to shut down just because they will run out of cash. The other are going to be saved by governments. So there will be less competition. The prices might go up since most of people will also run out. I don't know.
No, but this mindset about taking care of the planet and being aware of how you when you travel, that it's very polluting.
So actually, I think it's already happening in Sweden and this
plane shaming.
Plane shaming, yeah. But I don't like that, because I'm not like an eco-friendly hardcore person. I'm just a regular person, and I do think that
we are all eco-friendly.
Yeah, but what I mean is that I'm not, protesting all day, every day. But I do know that we have to take care of it, and I'm just doing my part, my contribution.
Do you think people can change if they are not forced to change?
That's a very good question, and that's what I'm trying to solve with this company, because I do think that our carbon footprint lives within our spendings, and I think if we can incentivize people to have a better behavior by having, if it's cheaper to buy food at eco-friendly merchants than a regular one, then of course you would. Why not? It's cheaper and you're doing good for the planet, so of course you would do it. So that's what we're trying to do at Till.
What's the name? So Till.
Yeah, till.am. It's not launched yet, but it's going to be launched.
Cool. I really want to see it. Jordan has a question. So Takeoff Labs is the Voodoo of consumer apps?
We could see it that way. So I know that Voodoo is doing gaming apps, partnering with other developers. But the model is a bit different. Ours is really like eFounders. And Voodoo, I know that Voodoo is also trying to go on social consumer apps, and I was actually having a conversation with some guys at King a few days ago, because most of these gaming studios are trying to move into the social consumer space. But that's something you need time to learn about, and I think that we have an edge there. We have distribution, we have like the product experience, and just a matter of launching them, I would say.
Okay, my friend. If you have any question, it's time to ask now, because actually we've been through a lot now. It's been it's almost 1 hour. 1 hour long conversation. I think, at least for me, it was a real pleasure to.
Thank you. It was great to catch up, to finally meet.
Yes,
because
it's funny. You said I met you, Alice, 8 years ago, and I thought, oh, who's that crazy girl?
That's true.
All right, and then we never talked.
And then we never talked.
Never judge.
I got the opportunity to meet a little bit more Osama in the past few months,
Yeah.
but I hopefully will be able to do the same soon.
With pleasure. Okay, to all of the people who are watching right now, we are creating a super cool experience, which is the chat roulette experience. You just have to click on networking, the little button on the left, networking, and you could meet people now. You can meet people now during 5 minutes each, and it's super cool. We have a last question for you, Rhai.
Yeah. Could you explain liquid pref? It's basically if you sell your company for a certain amount, your investors are gonna pay themselves first for what they put in the company, and then you're gonna share on according to your shares.
And Osama just gave you Investopedia, the link to go deeper into it. If I have a promise app based on KPIs, but no team, still can join interested? 20K daily, 45-minute average.
Sure. Just send me an email. So my email is contact@rhai.fr, and I will look at it with pleasure.
Cool. All right. Tomorrow I'm going to have a meeting with another amazing entrepreneur. So you are all welcome to join. I will tell you who it is. Tomorrow it's with Olivier, the CEO of La Parisienne, a huge insurance startup. His story is crazy. Last question. Okay, we'll never end this one.
Take Off Labs is focused on the US or international. So that's a good question. It's actually so our distribution network is in the US, but we launch apps worldwide. So we are basically sure to blow up the app in the US, but that's where we're the strongest. But we can, we basically, for instance, Still is going to be a US company first, but the dating apps that we're launching later this week is going to be international.
Cool. It was amazing. It was a pleasure.
Alice.
What?
Thanks a lot. So do I have to click on?
No, you have to click on nothing. Yeah. Everybody, you are all invited to come in the networking sessions. You're going to meet tons of people who have been enjoying this conversation. So you already have a topic, an icebreaker, something to talk about with people. It's super cool to meet randomly people. It's better than any dating app, if you want to know what I think. So you go on networking and you click and you try. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure, and hope to see you soon, and good luck for